Anne, thank you for, giving me the opportunity to chat with you. I'm super excited. I'm so excited just based on our conversation that we've had recently. Well, it was a few weeks ago, and we were just back and forth, back and forth. It was just rolling. Amazing conversation just in such a short window. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast in the Heart of the Vault, and ready to open that vault and get right into it. So for the sake of our listeners and our viewers, let's talk about you, introduce yourself, and let's go way back. Let's go way back to, I don't know, adolescence, maybe late teens, early 20s. Let's dive into that.
Big question to start with. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for inviting me and for hosting me today. It's such a pleasure to speak to you on your podcast. I'm very excited to see what comes up today when we're talking. So my name is Anna. I am from the Netherlands. I am a somatic mental health therapist. I got into therapy work because I needed therapy myself. I had so many mental health challenges and conditions at an early age as a teenager. And I never wanted to be a psychologist at all, because I thought that was what everybody did and I didn't want to do the mainstream thing.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing what I'm supposed to do in this lifetime, I guess, which is holding space for women who've gone through traumatic events or big grief events or anything that's been hugely stressful for their nervous systems. And I do this both online for women, but I also do it in person when I work as a humanitarian in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq. So I'm very familiar with the topic that we'll be exploring and what your whole podcast is about so much, which is, losing someone, death, dying, the trauma that comes with it, and how we integrate that as part of our story.
Yeah.
And right now I'm on a nice little break in Kenya, because holding space and talking about these topics can also be heavy. So I'm choosing light and joy and fun and pleasure for a month, so I can also return back to my clients with a fully resourced nervous system.
Which is super important. As cliche as it sounds, but obviously you can't pour from an empty cup. So you got to fuel yourself, right? It's interesting. The first thing that came to my mind when you said from when you were younger and what led you into the field that you're in today is through trauma and things that were going on for you at that time. And you said, I don't want to be a psychologist. I definitely didn't want to do that. But is it a case of, because you find that a lot, that, everyone goes through stuff. None of us are unscathed, right? All relative, all different shapes and sizes. None of us are unscathed. But it's interesting, they say that it's those that have gone through stuff themselves and or still going. It's forever. It's something that we continue doing, where you hope so, that end up in that field. And is it almost like, kind of, when you say to someone, like I'll say with my kids, for instance, I'll try and I had a great childhood. I was super blessed with great parents, great family. But with my kids, how I show up for them, I always try and be the parent that I think I would need if I was in their shoes right now. And is that the case of you as doing the field of work in your expertise? Do you have that in mind? Do you show up as if you're showing up who you would have appreciated to show up for you during those tough times?
I like that question a lot, and it brings up a million things that I could answer to. I certainly do. I certainly know that I was attracted to this field because I was trying to understand my own family of origin and what was going on for us in my childhood home. I just didn't understand. I think, and I wasn't aware of it, obviously. That only came later, realizing, like, why am I interested in psychology? And it also really helped that I had visited a psychologist myself when I was 17, when I was struggling with a panic disorder. And I realized, wow, there's so much, there's so much I don't know about the human psyche and interactions and anxiety and how all of this works. So I think it was a combination of those two things. And most certainly believe so much in like the whole systemic and ancestral and intergenerational pieces that we also bring, which is me wanting to hold space for people in a way that never happened for my mother, who's gone through a lot of trauma. And then I went through very similar trauma to my mother, which is obviously very interesting because she did everything she could to protect me from going through the same as what she's been through. And I'm really feeling like I'm carrying it on. And I'm also trying to break with the cycle of, she's from a different generation. She didn't have people that were able to hold space for her in that way. It
Yeah.
wasn't accessible. We didn't know back then what we know now about nervous system and trauma and the importance of like absolute presence of somebody for someone else who's going through stuff. So I very much feel like I've been guided to be that person for other people that I needed when I didn't have it, that she
Sure.
needed it, didn't have it, and God knows whatever else has happened in our lineage that needed this type of support that I am now able to bring, and that's healing in itself for me too.
Yeah.
And what also came up when you asked your question, I was like, yeah, so often I've heard people say, oh, psychologists, they've got like shit of their own, like they're crazy themselves. And I'm like, maybe we are, and we have the bravery to look at it. We're doing something with it. There's so many people that are running away from their
100%.
mental health challenges.
Yeah.
So I'm honored when people say that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a mess. You are too, but you're not looking at it. And
Yeah.
that's why you're projecting it onto me. So
Yeah.
I'm so happy I'm so messy and I'm
Because
so
it still
human.
has that stigma, right? I like, both, like, I'll put it out there, both me and my kids have therapy. Obviously,
Yeah.
with losing Glenn and Charlie with his medical, and, Evie had issues at school. Like, I think the world would be a better place if we all had, if it was made easier for people to have a therapist, just to offload and just to not necessarily to get advice, but just to offload. And, the world would be a better place, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Or if we would have community like we did long, long, long times ago, that would be different too. But so many people feel isolated and don't feel safe enough to show their true selves. Everybody's masking, everybody's pretending to have it together. So in that case, yes, please find a therapist.
Yeah.
Please find somebody where you can take off all those layers of conditioning and masking so you can show your heart and everything that you're carrying and everything you're ashamed of. But I'm really truly hoping that we're not going towards a future where everybody needs a therapist because there is no community that can hold you. Sometimes
Yeah.
a chat with a friend or a group of friends can be more supportive than a chat with a therapist, but most of us don't have that depth and that vulnerability with the people that we interact with, which is so sad in itself as well, I think.
It is sad. It's very sad. So with you from there on, when you started, you then went overseas, did you? So that was your
Yeah, I
first role over there as a
yeah,
humanitarian, is that right?
yeah, I used to work I had a private practice in Amsterdam. Um, but I also felt a calling to do something that would like challenge me more and be more complicated. And probably subconsciously, I was looking for the similar kind of traumas that I'd been through and that my family had been through.
Yeah.
So I ended up working in war zones, which is not the trauma necessarily, even though I'm from the Netherlands, so my grandparents have been through the Second World War, etc. But yeah, I ended up working with women with sexual trauma mostly. Um, and I wasn't looking for that. It was like life was inviting me to those places. And a lot of these women that have war trauma also obviously have a lot of loss. They are still grieving so much because, for instance, the women I've worked with that were, taken by ISIS and they'd seen their partners being shot right in front of them. And then they were sold as slaves, for instance. So it's like piling up so much trauma. It's like the deepest and darkest stuff I've seen and experienced from them in my life. It's like horrendous.
So when you arrive there, like, obviously you've made that decision, you go to Afghanistan. Was it Afghanistan first, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Obviously that in itself is scary. like
Mm.
the unknown of what you're actually going to face. And so are you staying, is it like a community that you're, like a commune that you're staying within to help these women? Like, how does that look for you?
So the short answer is no, because what works best is having people from the local culture and train them so they're able to hold space for the people from their own like communities.
Right.
Because I
Okay.
could go in and work with these people, but that's not sustainable. Plus, I don't speak the language. Plus, I don't have the same complete background for things to land in. So it's always organized around doing capacity building for the people on the ground.
Wow.
So all the work that I've done has been to provide training and supervision to local, could be lay people that have no educational background in psychology, but it could also be social workers or psychologists or therapists. And I'd go with them to supervise them, and to get a better understanding of what the issues are, so I know what the training needs to be about and what kind of techniques and tools maybe are helpful in settings like that.
Did they
Um,
speak English, or did you have a translator with you to?
Yeah, both. So it
Both?
depends on what kind of level where we're at. Like in Afghanistan, there was very few people that spoke good English in the area where I was, which was very rural.
Yeah.
So I always had a translator with me, to support the teams.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you're going over there with fresh eyes, so to speak, but the knowledge and to share that and to embrace the trauma and to help them through it as best you can. But I would imagine not many words are needed for you to actually feel that energy and that sadness, and that would just be so obvious and so heavy. Would that be right? You can just
Yeah,
feel it, and oh
yeah.
God, that's a lot.
Well, it's also what I needed to learn, right? Like, how can I be
Yeah,
present for others in space without completely depleting myself and absorbing everybody's energy and everybody's stuff? So that was where I needed to go with myself. Like, how can I stay sane in an environment that's so dark and there's so much toxicity? And it's not just me supporting the people, in the field. It's also, working in the humanitarian setting does a lot with you too, because we do the same thing, right? If we're overwhelmed by trauma from being in Afghanistan and supporting people, we do the same thing. We cover up. We're not going to have really deep, open-hearted, vulnerable conversations in the evening with colleagues. So how do I navigate that? I'm
yeah,
looking for connection because I'm so used to showing myself vulnerably and open. But they are hardening and protecting themselves because it's not safe to just open up to everyone when you're in a crisis. You need to survive.
yeah,
So it's been super interesting as well to see what's my nervous system doing here? Like, and what's my wounding around, oh, I need to find connection to feel safe. And what do I need? Oh, I certainly need to call with a therapist who is in Paris once a week because I need to offload too. So, yeah, there was so many layers of me learning how to deal with my own traumas and my own wounding, my own mess while being around people and trying to serve other people. Yeah. And that was maybe even harder than actually being in the field and holding space for people that have gone through the worst things that you can imagine. So, yeah, some people have judgments about that, right? Like, well, you shouldn't go and do stuff like that if you don't really, have it together. I'm like, I do not know one single person in this life that has it together. We all bring our stories, we all bring our stuff, and it
yeah. And
will
it
wake
makes
up.
it's who you are, isn't it? It's who you are, because if you didn't have those stories, you wouldn't have been able to show up the way you did for them moving forward, or you wouldn't have had
Exactly.
that calling. Full stop.
Yeah,
You
absolutely. I
know?
feel that too. A lot of people are in denial about that, right? They're like, no, I'm
Yeah.
just here interested in this work. I'm like, I don't think so. Why
I
would
think
you do
it's
that
just,
to
it comes
yourself?
with naivety, like anything, isn't it? It's a lack of knowledge or understanding. That's usually when their walls are up. It's because they don't know enough,
Mhm.
which again is really important. Hence, we're doing podcast work, and you're doing all the work that you do just to get that, even if it's a trickle effect, at least it's getting out there. Um, how long was that process for you then? Like when you first arrived, were you confident in the sense of, yes, this is your place for quite some time? Like, were you, Or were you at any point thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Do I need to just, am I enough? Like there'd be all sorts of then all the work that you've done on yourself over the years is starting to unravel a little bit, you know? I would imagine, I don't know. Is that what it was like?
Yeah. I question myself every day, like,
Yeah.
what do I do? Why am I here? But I equally had the same amount of moments where I was like, oh my God, I'm so meant to be here. This is, oh my God, this is what I'm meant to do. Feeling like super like clicked into my purpose. Super like, oh, this is where I want to bring myself. This is so meaningful. This is so life-changing. Um, but it's really, really hard at the same time. So I had to
Yeah, it was
navigate
super
around
dangerous too, right?
as well. Yeah, so you're
Yeah.
constantly on so your nervous system is always in fight flight until it collapses, which is why there's so much burnout in this sector. And that makes so much sense because you always have to be on guard because there's ISIS was fighting the Taliban just around the corner and you could hear the shooting and all of that. And you just have to put that to the back because otherwise you can't do your job. And plus, it's really interesting to look at why would I want to go to a place like that? Like, why I want to put myself through this? So it also starts that process as well. Like, so what is it in me that wants an environment like this? Why is this so stimulating for me? Why do I feel at my best when everything around me is chaos and unsafety, which obviously is my trauma? I
Yeah.
thrive when it's unsafe because I've had that so often in my life
So
that I'm
that's
able.
that unsafeness and that, you know, that fight or flight mode is actually a comfort for you, almost like a security blanket for you, because that was what you've been used to in the, not to that extreme, like being in Afghanistan in a war zone, but for other reasons, obviously, something so extreme felt comfortable. That's
Yeah.
insane, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I mean. This is my mess, and I can pretend like that story doesn't exist, but that story exists. My nervous system is wired for hyperactivity, for fight flight. I'm really good under fight flight energy, and that's not sustainable. And I see a lot of people that in this society are very good at fight flight. I think we're more and more wired like that, right? Because this society is so stimulating and so much is happening to us, and we're connected to the whole world, and there's a lot of fight or flight energy. And
Yeah.
I learned that I was riding it. Like it was fight, flight, 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 like really high intensity. And then I had to get out of the country and drop, complete collapse, letting my nervous system like go into this full dorsal energy of, and I'd recover. And then I needed the fight, flight again. So this was my pattern for 8 years, going in, going
Wow.
out, all in, all out.
And so how long would you be there for before you checked out and had to go and recuperate and go home and do all that? So what time kind of time frames that?
Yeah, that's usually decided by the context and by the organization. So for my
Right.
first period in Afghanistan, it was 8 weeks, and then you had to leave for at least a week. It's mandatory. So wherever you go, you need to leave the country for a week at least after 8 weeks. But later on, I shifted to easier contexts where there was more freedom, a little bit less threats. Still, Iraq, north of Iraq, still not super safe. But I was able, to stay longer because you're not constantly fearing the next rocket launch. So then I would do 3 months and take 2 to 3 weeks off, or I'd stay a little bit longer even. I'd be okay with that. It depends.
That's amazing. That's just incredible, you even doing that. And with the women that you worked over time, obviously faces became familiar to you, I'm assuming, with the women that you work with. Did you see using um, the tools that you had and the systems that you had in place with the team, did you see some changes, fairly
A
evident
lot.
changes over time? Did you? And had they, prior to you going out there, was had they done anything like that before? Like, had they had help similar to someone like you before, or not really?
In Afghanistan, no, nothing. This was completely new, and it's good to maybe know a little bit more about, it's not like one-on-one therapy like we would do it, you in
Yeah,
Australia or
sure.
me in Europe. It is there's a lot of psychoeducation, like explaining to people who've just crossed the border because they're all refugees. You've been through a lot. All these headaches that you're having, all these stomach aches, all the medication that you're taking is probably because the stress is getting to your body. There's nothing wrong with you. Because as soon as you talk about them needing to talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, there's a complete block. No, I'm not crazy. So we have a lot of work to do in just decreasing stigma and just helping people understand that mental health conditions are a really normal response in such a situation. So in Afghanistan, it was all focused on that, like psychoeducation, just holding space, helping people, teaching people how to hold space, how to not give advice all the time and just be present for someone. Whereas in the last couple of years in Iraq, it's way more advanced and closer to what we know as therapy. But then still, if people are in a place of constant potential trauma or unrest or lack of stability, you're not going to do trauma work. We don't do the EMDR unless we know they're in a safe place, they're stable, relatively stable.
Yeah.
Then we can go in and treat the trauma. But I think really, and I feel that as a therapist also working with people from the global north, it's so much about integration. I really don't believe so much in like healing the trauma. Like, what does that even mean? I see
Yeah.
everybody going to ayahuasca ceremonies and releasing through breath work, and I see there's a lot of goodness in that. And also, why do we need that? Why we should also be looking at this society being so traumatizing right now, and can we just integrate what we've been through as part of our life story instead of trying to just go to therapy and get fixed. I just don't believe in the fixing.
It's
So
never going to go away, is it? It's not like you can
no,
open a box and just put it in there and put it away. I mean, people can suppress those feelings, and that's not good for you, as we all know. But yeah, it's never going to go away. And I'm glad you touched on that as well. Like it's the same as grief in that sense where it's happened and it didn't happen any other way. It happened the way it did, but it doesn't mean you can't, there's no time frame on that. After 6 months, no longer talk about it as if it did. That's more damaging. But it's
yes,
how to live life going forward with what happened and making the best out of life, but acknowledging that happened because it did.
yeah. It's so for me, healing is integration. Integration is healing. And I think grief is such a good example of it because there's nothing you can do to get rid of the grief. It's always
Yeah,
going to be there
yeah,
until your last breath. You'll be
yeah,
missing him. So I just really wish that there would be more attention in the society for the narrative of just normalizing the human experience. It's full of pain. It's full of uncomfortable feelings and discomfort. And the Buddha knew that thousands of years ago. Like suffering is inevitable,
yeah,
but we will suffer less when we accept the fact that we are human beings and we go through pain. So how do we relate to pain? Can we orient differently towards what we're experiencing and find ways to welcome discomfort because grief is highly uncomfortable, and that's why people, and you know more about this than me, people get so uncomfortable when you're still grieving 2 years later. Why? Because they can't handle their discomfort. There's nothing
yeah,
wrong with you, but they'll project their discomfort onto you. Like, well, you're still not over it.
yeah,
No, you should
yeah.
never get over it. That'd be
It's the
crazy. Grief is
same.
the other side of love. Like,
Yeah. And
how do
and
you
all
feel about
it's going to do is I've said to the kids, especially Evie, who's 18, is don't stop talking. If you're in full conversation and then it goes silent, because we get that a lot, it's like,
it? Yeah.
not to change the subject, we get that line a lot, right in the thick of it. And so
Oh,
I just say, no, I haven't actually finished what I was saying, or no, I'm talking about my dad, like, or
good.
I'm talking about my granddie, or what, keep talking because you're actually, one, you're helping yourself, but two, you're helping them because at some point, they have to get uncomfortable, you know, because that's the only way we're going to learn going forward. It's never going to be the best conversations are uncomfortable, aren't they?
That's
You
where the
know?
connection happens in that
Yeah,
discomfort,
yeah,
finding each other there.
yeah.
And I wish your daughter wouldn't have to be tasked with, the education part of it. Like we're helping others by claiming space to talk about the death of her father and I just wish she wouldn't have to do that. Like,
I
I want to create this
know.
society where that's just normal, where we can be human again instead of thinking that we always need to be fixed or optimized, or we're not robots.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. And the longer we keep on trying to optimize and fix, the worse it gets. And then people need healing from the healing.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we doing?
It's like having a meeting about the meeting. Like it just doesn't stop. I know. And it's funny because Evie, well, both my kids think the same as me, and my husband was like that as well. Just constantly on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Like just, I almost go, I envy those who are just,
Yeah,
no ambition, no. I know it sounds terrible, but just have that. Just happy with your, you know, spaghetti bolognese on a Wednesday night, and this like everything's just mapped out. I don't envy it. I mean, who am I trying to kid? But just to have that nothingness up there in your brain, because mine is constant. It was constant before we lost Glenn, it's constant afterwards, and the kids, especially Evie's the same. And I'm just kind of we've both been saying sometimes you don't have to have a reason for everything. Like, because you want to sit on the lounge and just read that afternoon. If you've got that, if you're able to do that, just do it. There's no reason. It's not necessarily because you're feeling really sad or because you're feeling exhausted or you want to shut off the world or whatever that is. It just is. And do it
yeah,
and surrender to
yeah,
that, just silence that
yeah,
mind a little bit. It's crazy.
yeah.
And so to have all that, external of, like I said, those external influences of how it should show, how you should be or how you should not be, and all of that, it's a lot of white noise, isn't it?
Not. And at least we as adults can be picky, and say, I'm going to be selective who I'm going to spend my time with because it's toxic to be around
Yeah.
people that, you know, it's just, I'm just thinking about your kids and how hard it is being a teenager because you just want to belong. And then you just belong maybe to people that, oh, it's just, isn't it so complicated to be a human and especially a young human?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think it can be a lot growing up anyway when you're going through adolescence and puberty and all that comes with hormones and all those kind of things. And again, that's where I just try and amongst everything that's going on, I just try and show up how I would want. And they
Mm,
did show up for me, my parents, but they didn't have the tools and things like we did, like we do now, like you said. But
yeah,
just try and simplify it that way, not overcomplicate it. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? And even therapy, like we'll go through stages where our therapist, she's amazing. Like she comes over to the house, like she's so beautiful. She just gets the family dynamics. She's amazing. And she's a medium as well, which is another level. Um,
wow, yeah.
yeah, it's a whole new level, but we've embraced that. We love it. But there's times where I'm done with talking now. Like actually, I just want to sit with it because there's only so much you can keep going through that too. Like when I say going through it, as in not the grief, because that will continue forever and a day, but even the kids, Charlie would just he's open communication with me. He's 13 now. Same with Evie, he's full, he'll talk about everything. He doesn't necessarily, he'll go, no, I don't want to do family session. I'll go, that's fine. That's totally fine. I think you've just got to be guided by them.
Yeah, that's
And Evie's
beautiful.
the same. Evie go, I've got nothing to say now, which is great because you do just have to sit and different things will come up for you so you can overwork things. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that? Like, do you think that's,
very much because I'm all about the body and the body knowing, the way out. The body's holding, keeps the score. The body has it in its like cells. It's all so biological and natural, and the body will have its own pace. Whereas
yeah,
sometimes trying to pace things way too fast, Like, okay, let me do my 5 EMDR sessions quickly, one after another. The body can't do that. It needs to integrate, it needs time to come back to like nature time or Kairos time, they call that.
Yeah.
Like, how much time does it take for a cloud to form or for a tree to grow? Like, it's the same with us. Like, can we allow ourselves the time that we need? And it's beautiful that your kids already know that.
Yeah.
No, not right now. I don't want to talk. Talking is not what they need in that moment. Maybe
Yeah.
next week, maybe next month, maybe next year. And I really always, when I work with clients one-on-one, I don't do 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions. I want long term. We need to help the body to let it, let her have it her way.
Yeah.
And grief is a good example of it. There's no way you can control it. There's no way you can say when you're going to have a bad day or when you're going to be, you know, flooded by grief or pain or longing, missing, all of that. But the body will find her way, and we have disconnected from the body. Like we're all living here in our heads up because that's what the society wants from us. That's how we've been educated. That's what we've been trained for. But this whole vessel that we have holds all this information and also all that wisdom. So that's why I've become a somatic therapist, because I'm like, we can't bypass that any longer by doing more cognitive therapy, talking our way through feelings. Feelings don't happen here. They
Yeah.
happen here.
On your
So
body. And it's, I want
yeah,
to touch on somatic with you because I actually, I'm aware of it and I know bits about it, but I don't know a lot, obviously. But what I do know, and probably always have, like, I'm a big one on my gut feeling. If always go by my gut, if my gut's off, and every decision I've made and not on my gut feeling, it's always been a mess. Like it's always been a disaster. Or I've gone, why didn't I listen? So I'm more for that. My human design, following my energies, and the kids are like that as well, which is amazing. And even knowing on the stresses in my body, like for me, it's all round crazy, but it's around the hips and the lower back in particular. Since we lost Glenn, that stress, it doesn't matter how much massage I get, physio, I'm at the gym, like I train most days, I always have. It's exercises in my blood, good for this as well. And
yeah.
so talk to me about that. I'm intrigued about that, with the connection with the nervous system and how that, what led you to it, into that, and explain it for us, in particular for me and for our listeners as well, because I'd love to know more about
Yeah, gladly. We could talk about this for hours because it's such a, I mean, the wisdom of our bodies, just the wisdom of how our nervous system is built. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
It just shows how incredible what our bodies are. Well, for me, it really started when I had this panic disorder when I was 16, and I had cognitive behavioral therapy, and it did help, but not completely because the panic attacks kept on coming back. And it really took a long time for me to realize panic is a very visceral thing. Panic doesn't happen in my brain. Maybe I can, start it by thinking anxious thoughts, but it's my body that's responding to something. So if I don't work with the body, the panic attacks are just going to keep going. And I kept running because panic is run, it's a flight response. I'd feel something in my body. I would think, oh, I'm going to die. And I'd do whatever I could do not to have to feel that stuff.
what did a panic attack look like for you at the, because I'll hear people talk about them, and I've got friends who've had them really bad. um I've never experienced, although I did experience like blacking out really often. And I look back now, it was after I had a major accident when I was a child. And so I was in and out of hospital and things. And I wonder if that was a prerequisite of that. Like, I wonder, but it'd come for no reason. I'd have to hit the floor. It'd almost be as if these shutters are shutting and I'm about to pass out. So I'd have to go to the lowest point before it took me to the lowest point, and I'd faint. But I wouldn't, and I'd have the palpitations and everything. Literally, with my kids when I was little, they'd be like, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I'd just be on the floor going,
Oh,
you know. Right from the age of 12, after my accident as a kid. So I wonder if that, I do wonder, because there was never anything medically. I had all the tests, everything. There was never anything medically. But describe one of your panic attacks to me.
well, luckily they've changed because I've been able to navigate it better. I still sometimes have them. But when I was 16, I would have and it's still the same. It's similar, but it's just not as overwhelming. So I'd start to have some sensation in my body, whether it's heart palpitations or a feeling of dizziness or a shaking or a heat. And immediately I would think, I'm going to die or I'm going to get very sick. Oh, and then it would like go spiral into, what did I eat? Oh, did I inhale something? Is there somebody here? It was really crazy in the beginning. I thought people were maybe going to kill me, not me, but like accidentally somebody would have sprayed something and I'd be allergic to it. Like, wow, I'm just saying it now, making me realize, wow, that's a lot for a 16-year-old. I'd cycle somewhere, I'd smell something weird, and I would think, oh, what if this is toxic? What if this is going to kill me? And I'd spiral into thinking I was going to die. My whole body would explode into a complete flight response of, oh yeah, I can't even explain it. It's just such a high activation of the body. And all I could do was run from it. And I did that in my mind by like making up all kinds of stories or who am I going to call or let me get home as fast as I can. And just kind of waiting it out because I had no idea how to help my body come back from all that activation. But basically, it was always me thinking I was going to die or I was going to get very sick and nobody would be here to find me. So I would die eventually.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I
And then
haven't really thought.
your breathing would just be like, then you're trying to get your breath
Yeah,
and
and you make it worse because you're breathing, because you're in a flight response, your whole
yeah.
body is activated for a big threat. So my breathing would become more shallow. So my symptoms would get worse. I'd get like dark spots in front of my eyes and I was, see, I'm dying. So the body would like go deeper into it because I was getting more anxious and more worried. And sometimes it would feel like fainting and I'd have to sit down. And I honestly don't really remember, which is definitely a repressed part too. Like, how did I do that? Because sometimes I had days where I had full panic attacks and I wouldn't tell anyone because I
Oh
didn't know
my
what they were. I
God.
didn't understand. So I'd just sit maybe at school, like high school, thinking, oh, I can't sit any longer. I need to get up. I need to move. Oh, so I don't really remember how I
Because
literally survived.
it is, I mean, it's one of those as well. It would become so consuming and so rightly so, for anyone who's listening to this episode who struggles with panic attacks. It's almost like when I've had conversations with friends who've had them, they said it you can be having a really good day or it can be in any situation and then you don't always, it's not like you get in your own head going, oh my God, what if I had a panic attack here? What would I do? It's not that it can come from nowhere, but then there is a sense of, like you said, 4 in 1 day. After you're like, oh my God, is it going to happen again? I need to get home. And you could see that sense of insecurity. There was actually recently on she's on a TV show, she's a host, but she used to host a really well-known TV show, which was live. And she actually played back of her having panic attack, and no one actually knew
Yeah,
that she didn't tell a soul because she thought she would actually lose her
yeah,
credibility, which is so sad, and her
yeah,
job, and she'd never get a job again like it, and all that comes with it, as hard on herself. And the only difference in it, she said she was reading so fast. It was like the news clip of the, and she was reading so fast. And, a couple of people said, oh, you probably spoke a bit too quick during that segment. But she was like, I actually thought I was going to die. And
yeah.
all I kept thinking was, I have to get through this quickly. And then I can just, she had this plan. And then I'm just disappearing. I'll go in the back office and I'll just lie down a minute and no one will have to know. And it must be horrendous.
Mm. Yeah, and you get really good at hiding it. So nobody can see it. And in the meantime, your body is going through this half death portal. So yeah, I can really relate to what she says. And even, when I started telling people, I remember we were having dinner once and I ate fish and I had a panic attack. And I said to my dad, I'm not feeling well. And my dad said, let me feel your pulse. And my pulse obviously was really high because I had a panic attack. And he was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, your pulse is really high. So it made it worse. Like,
Oh,
see, yeah, I'm going to die. So people around you also don't really know how to support. And I really hope that has shifted now because is almost 25 years ago. But I'm just so glad that I found therapy and different kinds of therapy modalities that all helped me because in the end, for me, the panic attack started at some point because I'd been repressing my feelings for so long because I was always tuned into other people. Is my mom okay? How's my brother doing? Is everything going all right in the family dynamics? Like, I'm so tuned in. I'm so empathic. I'm so good at feeling other people's stuff that I completely abandoned my own. And at some point, my body had enough. And it was like, here we go. And it's just exploding. So right now, when I have panic attacks, I take them as a sign. Like, where have I been abandoning myself? Where have I been tuning into other people? Because it's unhealthy in the way, in
Yeah.
the extent in which I can do it. And this is not clients. It happens when in my personal life I overly tune into other people. So I don't want to say I'm grateful for them, but when they come, I now know, something's out, something's off. So I need to
Yeah.
look at that. Where am I again doing my old things, my old child patterns of, is everybody okay?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, putting yourself on the back burner when really you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before anyone else's.
Yeah.
So how does that, like in connection to like your nervous system and somatic, do you call it, is it somatic healing or is it just somatic? Like, how do you, what's the
It
name?
depends. So what I do is somatic therapy, but
Right.
it's
Okay.
a variety of modalities, and there's so much available online. So a lot of people call it healing as well. But because I'm trained as a psychologist, I use the term therapist.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so
But
is it getting the energy flowing through your body? Is that what the idea of it is?
sometimes it can be that. For instance, when there's a lot of activation, like when there's panic or anger, any intense emotion, it means you're in like a hyper energy, so in a very high level of activation. Then it can be really helpful to complete the cycle, to make sure that that can flow and that can go. So for me, it's a lot of like release stuff and moving and making sounds and noises,
Yeah.
moving my body so the cycle can be completed while I'm telling myself, you're not going to die. You just have an excessive amount of energy right now. So let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Um, it can be a similar feeling to people who've like had too much coffee. You can have that same feeling of jittery. You just need to go for a run. And then after that, you'll feel better. You
Yeah.
need to run up and down the stairs or jump on your place, whatever.
Yeah.
So that can be one way to deal with the energies that you're holding in your nervous system. But there's also the other side when people are hypo-aroused, when they have too little activation and they feel immobilized. For them, it can be helpful to have a little bit of activation. So using your senses when you're feeling completely frozen, you can't get out of bed. Okay, how can I use my senses to wake myself up a little? And this is just like a super simple, basic example here, but our body is so complex and there's so many layers and levels. We're multidimensional. We can be in a fight flight on a mental level, like ruminating, overthinking, speedy thinking, whereas the body on a physical level can be in a freeze. So it's not just, oh, if you're hyper, do this. No, what part of your body feels a certain way. Sometimes it's a double bind. You can't go anywhere. You feel frozen and activated. What do you do then? So that's why I feel, working with a somatic therapist can really help you understand your body on much deeper level than just doing a 10-day somatic nervous system
Yeah.
hack challenge online where you fix yourself. Because it's just not that simple. But all of it helps, I'm like, do the challenge, start to understand how your nervous system works. But if you really want to understand on a deeper level, then work with somebody one-on-one. Because we're 70% of our time we're in survival. We're in a nervous system activation or under activation. And that's our daily state. And most of us don't even know. So we just lash out of anger onto people just because something's triggered us, and we respond with a fight response, which makes no sense. So if you can learn to understand when your body's triggered by what and how you can work with the energy instead of making it wrong, like, oh, I shouldn't be in this anger. Yeah, probably you should be. Something's happened. Then
Yeah.
we complete this. And it's just stuff from the past. I'm triggered because of stuff I've been through as a child or a teenager. And now my partner says something to me and I'm like, what? Has nothing to do with him. Just there to activate the wound and to activate the energy that's stored in my body.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something, just what you said there. I mean, yeah, a thing happened to me too. It wasn't anything major, but it triggered something. Definitely triggered something. And I was just like, normally in the past, certainly, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I would have said, or just get over it, or don't worry about it. I'd acknowledge it, I think. But I'd just be like, oh, you're just being silly, or you just where now I'm more like, well, acknowledge it, and why did that come up for you? So I'm acknowledging it, but I'm not staying there. I'm not like totally dissecting it and going into it. It wasn't that big a deal, but I'm not dismissed it. Um, but I think it's like what you said before is like when things do come up for you, acknowledging them. You just said something about, well, why are you angry? Don't be angry. But I think they're all emotions and they're all as worthy as each other. They're all relative to what you're going through. And I think it's such a dangerous ground when we just go, well, you can't be angry, or like you said, yelling at your partner because they said something when really it's not what they said. It's triggered the inner child from something that you probably don't even remember anyway when you were 2 or 3, but it's subconsciously embedded there. Um, Acknowledge it. Don't rip your partner's head off because it's not on them. But again, open communication, isn't it? Having that conversation as to why you think it triggered or what have you. Because at some point it's going to boil over, isn't it? If you are dismissive, it's going to show up in the body or at some point.
Yeah, and it gets in the way of true connection and like intimacy, because if you're not understanding what's happening in your body and you're just like projecting it all around you, it impacts your relationships so heavily. And we operate from our wounding. So most of our relationships are like trauma bonding anyway, because that person reminds us of something from the past that, as you said, we don't even remember. And click, there we are. And we keep on repeating from the past. So if you're going on this healing journey, I think it's so fascinating because all your relationships are going to change. And if you can allow yourself to be more open and take responsibility for everything that's coming up, then there's also space for more intimacy and really being met on a deeper level for who you truly are. Like right now, when I'm triggered and my partner says or does something and I'm like, "Argh," the way that I'm able to deal with that now, I tell him, I'm like, fuck, I'm triggered. Like, oh, I've got all my kids are coming out right now to play and they do not want to play with you. They just want to attack you. And he just looks at me with a smile and I turn around and I do my anger practices, whatever, in front of him now because I feel so comfortable and I don't have shame around it anymore.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that because of shame usually. And then I turn around and we look at each other. We laugh or we cuddle or we hug or whatever. It's just so nice if you don't have to be hijacked by whatever happened to you past that you might not even remember, but you're just projecting it all the way, all the time. 70% of our time we're in that hijack from the past. Like, it's so liberating to say, I'm going to work with this stuff and I'm going to learn how to hold myself in all my emotions. I'm not going to say, oh, I don't want shame, but I do want joy. That doesn't work like that. We need to learn how to include them all. And that gives us so much power, and we can stop wasting all of our life energy on like pretending we have it together or we're okay, we're not feeling anything, because it drains us completely and it keeps us from intimacy, keeps us from joy, keeps us from pleasure, keeps us from being present right now because we're still in our history. So yeah, I love that you asked me that and we got to this point.
It's so about, when we talk about gratitude, we're big on gratitude, but about being, like just being where you are right now, just being in the moment. But you just said before about joy and pain, and it was actually my therapist who said, and to the kids as well, you can have both at the same time. Like I think what you just said before is like again, there's another stigma. It's one or the other, but that's not actually how it is. Like you can be pretty pissed off about something that's happened or just not in the best frame of mind, but you can still have joy in those moments, in different moments, and because it's almost you just got to surrender to that, because otherwise you're missing out on that, or you're still 10 years looking behind you for 10 years when something did your head in and you haven't dealt with it, and then instead of being in the moment, like it's literally just dragging you back, dragging you back, dragging you back. I wanted to just say to you as well, just in that fight or flight mode, and honestly, I thought I'd done so much work on myself over the years. Like I've always been into like, self-love, doing all the right things, doing my line of business is wellness as well, other than the podcast. And oh my God, I was like so naive. I thought I'd done the work, but literally I'd like scratched that surface.
Quite bad.
Like I honestly thought, yes, I'm onto this. Like I'm just, I'm not, I knew it all because I knew I had so much to learn. I'll always be the student, never the teacher. But oh my God, like I have honestly, hand on heart, learned more in the last 18 months since losing Glenn that I've learned, safe to say, my entire life, because it's literally like you're in that dark well and
Yeah.
you've got a lot of learning to do. But about myself, like I've got a long way to go, but I can definitely see changes in myself. But also I can see that when you talk about the fight or flight mode, I've always been how you described yourself in Afghanistan, that fight or flight, like let's go, and that was actually me. Oh, you want a house building? I'm your person. You want me to design your new bedroom? I'll do that. Do you want me to pick your kids up? I'll be there. I'll cook you dinner. I'll like everyone. That for
Yeah.
everybody. And then when life changed for us, I just didn't have that. Everything I had in my power was literally about own oxygen mask and my kids. That was it. It was the three of us, and fortunate to have a great network around us. But what I did notice was after the numbing, and reality started to kick in a little bit more, I noticed myself, yeah, obviously sadness, and I guess what I'm trying to say is notice myself going into fight or flight mode that when there was no need, as in like, if I sat still for a while, like, oh, I need to be doing something. I need to be, I love my own time. I love my own space. I love my own company. I really do. Always have done. But still trying to, and what I've learned is that's how I've been all my freaking life. I've been like that for years and years and years of just on the go, 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 like constantly. And then you have kids, and then, or, if it's not kids, it's your family or it's friends or whatever. That's what I've always done. And so if I didn't have that, I'd try and find something to give me that. And I was like, oh, this has got to stop. Like, this has just got to stop. And it wasn't even, it was almost like, Linz, you're full of your own importance. Like, it's not that deep. It's not that serious. Like, you don't need to be. So over time, I liken it to the shaking the apple tree, where the bad apples have just all fallen off, you know?
Mm.
And I'm just like settling with the here and now and being content with that in a lot of ways, and prioritizing, where now I'm like, no, I'm not just filling that up with just because it needs to be filled up. I'm just not doing it. Do you find that a lot with like with yourself, and you've done the work on yourself and doing the nervous system? Do you feel like that is a big part of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we can I don't think rewire is the right word, but I want to say we can reorganize, rewire our nervous system by learning to hang out on the edge, for instance, and doing the things that's uncomfortable, which for many people is be still, and I think the examples that you're giving is the same. You're reorienting towards certain states. You're realizing what you've been doing. Oh, I don't, to become more intentional. You create choice moments.
Yeah.
Then this is what is building nervous system capacity means being able to hold more, to be with more, to hang out on the edge maybe. And it gives you more agency. So you're not being run by your nervous system anymore, or by your thoughts, or by your survival mechanisms. You're able to choose more and have more, I don't like the word control, more agencies may be better. And and learning how to hold multiple things at the same time. Like, as you said, you can hold grief and pleasure at the same time in the same body. And also you can hold the flight response, wanting to get up and help someone or do something for somebody else. And, you know, the wanting to be grounded at the same time and staying here in this moment, even though it would probably feel better to run or to go into fight.
Yeah.
What you've been doing sounds like you've been enlarging your nervous system capacity, or some people call it the window of tolerance, like what you can tolerate in terms of feelings and sensations in your body's gone wider after what you've been through losing Glenn.
Well,
Does
so
that
your fight
resonate?
or flight is only your fight or flight is usually like you fear, like you're in fear. So fight or flight, as in, it's normal to have that. It's encouraged to have that, but it's only supposed to be in increments, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
supposed to be like, if you're going like you in Afghanistan, like that wouldn't be increments. It'd literally be through your
Non-stop.
entirety while you're there, which is just crazy. Like no one can come
Yeah.
to you, which is why they'd get you to go away, even if it was for a week, in so you can come back and function and feel more grounded again, and off you go again. It's just not normal for anyone to be in that state. So I understand how the nervous system can just become absolutely annihilated
Absolutely.
when you're in that state, for sure.
And that's what you're seeing right now. Most people are in a chronic state of fight flight, and it doesn't last. Your adrenals can't keep up with that. That's too much stress hormone for the body. So eventually the body will go into a freeze. And then a lot of people go now in a chronic freeze, which is what you're seeing around you. People are not feeling anymore. People are like disconnecting from life because it's too much, it's too overwhelming, literally because your nervous system and your whole body can't really process it anymore. We all have digestion issues, so many chronic conditions, so many women with autoimmune diseases. I have this image now of like people like sitting back for the next wave to come, more information, more news, more tragedy. They
Yeah,
can't handle that. They're not
heavy,
built for
heavy.
that. Yeah.
So what would you advise to like our listeners? If you say we've got listeners who are listening and that they're like, oh my gosh, and that's me. That's exactly, I'm spinning all these plates. Going through a lot of stuff, however that looks for them, not necessarily grief per se, but they're just on hard times and they're just really, really struggling at the moment. What are the basics that you could say for them to do to just help them?
I think the first thing is it's important to look at the narratives that you have running, because as you say, like I'm spinning all these plates. Do I really need to have all these plates spinning?
Mm.
Like, am I just responding? Am I just being reactive to what society or my family or my boss or everybody around me is asking of me? Or can I go back, take a step, take a breath and think, wait, is this how I want to live my life? What are my priorities here? Because how many plates do you want to have spinning? Because if it's too much, it's too much. But we are so conditioned to think that we need to do that to be worthy. And it all comes back to our own wounding of not being worthy if we're not performing, if we're not producing, if we're not the best, if we're not efficient, da 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 da. All those narratives are coming from wounding. So look at that first. And if it's hard to make any changes on your own, get some help. Like, let's normalize that. First of all, as you said in the beginning, it's good for everyone to talk to somebody and to
Yeah,
look at, why do I need to perform or try to be the best person at my work or start another new business or be the best mom and also be the best this and that and that? Why is it not enough for me to say, I'm just going to be a really good mother right now?
yeah,
And my job is a side thing, because we're like overly identified with being great at everything that we're doing and everything that we're asked to do. It's inhuman. Nobody can sustain that their whole lives. And if
yeah,
they can, that means that there's a continuous fight flight happening, and you're constantly over asking your body. So yes, it's good to do nervous system hacks and take an ice bath here and there, but now that has become another plate spinning. Oh, I need to do my 3 hour
I need
morning
to get
ritual
up
to
at
be.
4 in the morning now instead of 5 to sit in the ice bath for an hour. It's just
That's
another
the
thing
last
for a
thing.
lot of people.
That's,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's just another added plate that's spinning.
yeah,
It's another overwhelm for the body, especially for women. That's really terrible because it messes with our hormones. So yeah, some people say, well, I can't make any changes right now. And I always think that's not really true for most people. but we think we won't be as worthy, or will be seen differently, or will be judged when we take a step back somewhere, or we say no to something. Putting boundaries in place, feeling our boundaries
Yeah.
starts with feeling our bodies, and then overcoming shame and guilt for when we're going to say no. So how can you start feeling your guilt? When I say no to somebody, I also have stuff coming up. But I have a choice. Either I'm overriding my own boundary by pleasing the other person, or I'm learning how to sit with the shit that comes up when I say no to somebody and they might be disappointed in me.
Yeah.
There's two ways, it's your
Yeah.
it's all on you to decide which route you're taking.
Yeah, I know. And the crazy thing is when you are spinning all these plates, you're not being the best at everything anyway, because it's just not possible. So
Um,
so your kids are missing out a little bit. Your work life's missing out a little bit because they're not getting the best version of you. And really, does it really matter? Um, Personally, but you know what I'm saying? Like priority, and I know I come. I don't want to come across to the listeners like I see things differently now. I just see things so much differently, and that's never going to change. So priorities have become just such a. I wish I lived in this state before a
mm,
lot of the time. Could have, should have. Hindsight's a wonderful thing because you know why run yourself ragged? I mean, I was always present with my kids, but like it was activities, you're just racing around. Where now I'm just present with my kids and I'm a bit of business and whatever, and I say no to so much stuff, but it's important for us going forward. And it's such a it's just that big. And honestly, a lot of the things were just fillers anyway. They just weren't that important, you know? So so you're right in what you said, like for people just to and for our listeners, and they're saying, I can't possibly fit anything else in. It's not about fitting anything else in. It's about taking things out, isn't it?
yes.
And
Yes.
and applying yourself to those things that matter. But I'm sure, if you looked at relationships and friendships, and I'm not saying dismiss those, like, but those that really matter and those that you go, actually, oh, I don't like that. Well, it's not that I don't like that group, but I have nothing in common with them. And when I come away from going out with them, I don't feel good about myself. I feel exhausted. I feel drained. And then that's the only, Saturday night I have free. So I miss out catching up with my family, who I really want to be with. It's about just ciphering through that, what's important. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm running this online course right now for a group of women called Say Yes to the Mess, and it all starts with tracking what happens in your body during the day. When do you feel depleted? Oh, it's after that conversation with that person. Where
Yeah.
are you like saying yes to indeed groups of friends where actually feel so uncomfortable just sitting next to them? But we are so afraid to say no to stuff because we're so afraid to be with ourselves, which is I think the story for most people. So we're like filling up more, and it's not even nourishing. You're just like putting your agenda full, so you don't have to sit down and feel how you're actually feeling on the inside. So it's just another escape. It's just like Netflix, but Netflix might give you a bit more rest and rejuvenation than another birthday party where you really feel terrible. So
Yeah.
start tracking. How are you feeling? What's your body saying in certain moments? Like, do you have a pit in your stomach while you're talking to that colleague? Why are you talking to them? Do you
Yeah.
really need to?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because the body's continuously communicating to you like four
Just not
times per
listening.
second. No, and we've lost the communication with our body. Our body fluency is like gone below zero. But that's where you can really find your information towards what do I actually care about and what is serving me, instead of continuously being reactive to the life that you've created and is continuously asking something from you that you don't really have the energy to give.
Yeah.
And it
Love
takes
that.
a big life event for most people to stop. It's
Yeah.
really unfortunate, but this is what it takes for many people. And then all of a sudden, as you said, there's a big breath, and you're like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that anymore. What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's crazy, and I'm sure there's, unfortunately, there's so many people. But I would hate for our listeners to, need for them to go through an awful event of some,
Yeah.
to actually acknowledge that. Because I think if you did, anyone, if you actually just sat there for a minute, and how many people you could go out and talk to 10 people just in a shopping centre or in a cafe, and half of those will tell you they're exhausted. you
Yeah.
know, like straight up, they'll tell you, I'm just exhausted. Like, it's just like if you actually just sat with that and just listened to that yourself, because no one knows your body better than yourself, providing you sit with it and really, listen to it. As you said, it's a starting point, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm also just thinking, on the other side of this uncomfortable work is so much pleasure. You can't even imagine, how light and joyful and pleasurable things can become when you're able to work with all that clutter that's clouding your field right now. But there's only one way, and it's through, unless you want
Yeah,
to keep going around. But life's gonna toss similar challenges to you until you say, okay, let me see what's in the fire then.
yeah,
Because it's just us trying to run from our discomfort and our suffering.
yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Well, thank you for today. You're amazing. And you're amazing, but also you've actually took the time to come on my podcast in the Heart of the Vault while you're on holiday in Kenya. So that's incredible. I thank you so much. Here you are telling about having your time, and then you're on holiday and you're actually on my podcast. But I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. You're an absolute delight. Thank you. I'm so glad our paths have crossed, and I'm sure we'll be working together on other stuff in the future. I appreciate you. So thank you. And yeah, we'll chat soon.